The Panamanian Corporation is the #1 top choice for people looking for a traditional international business company. Now, this isn't biased. This is objective analysis that has yielded that in the vast majority of cases, Panama is simply the best jurisdiction for this. And stay tuned to this video to find out why. My name is Javier Correa. I'm the director here at the Rothbard Group, where we form Panamanian corporations and also Nevis companies and BVI in Hong Kong for clients on a daily basis. And we're in the front lines of offshore entity formation. And with our experience, we have actually come to confirm that Panama is truly the #1 option in the vast majority of cases. Not every case is identical. Each case has to be analyzed on its own merits based on the facts and circumstances. But for the vast majority of clients we have worked with, Panama has just been the #1 option when we compare to the other available options within the realm of traditional offshore companies. And in this video, we're going to tell you why. So let's dive right in. #1 is privacy. Privacy is an element that you can find in various jurisdictions, but Panama does it exceptionally well. In Panama, the corporate charter is a public document, and you will find the names of the officers and of the directors of Panamanian corporations there. However, the information of the shareholders of Panamanian corporations is kept fully private. Your shares are issued in traditional share certificates that you can then keep in a safety deposit box or in a private vault, and essentially your name as the shareholder of the Panamanian corporation doesn't pop up on any public document whatsoever. So privacy is something that is very well kept in Panama. The privacy laws on top of that make it extremely difficult and very rare for a court to order the registered agent or the directors of the corporation to reveal the name of the shareholder. Panama has the right balance of enough privacy to guarantee your asset protection and your discretion, while also being sufficiently transparent to allow easier banking access than its Caribbean counterparts. #2 is Law 32 of 1927, and that is a very technical term, but that is the law that governs what corporations can and cannot do in Panama. And let me tell you, Law 32 of 1927 is one of the most flexible corporate frameworks that I've ever worked with as a professional in the international business structuring industry. In Panama, corporations are extremely flexible to have multiple types of shares, to have different arrangements for the board of directors, to structure the affairs of a Panamanian corporation in the way that the owners and the directors of the corporation see fit. So my point here is the flexibility that Panama allows to actually utilize Panamanian corporations is enormous, and that is something that I really want to emphasize as a very positive note. Now, the third element is access to the Panamanian banking system. When it comes to offshore banking, meaning, let's say, banking in traditional offshore jurisdictions, I firmly believe Panama is one of the best jurisdictions out there. The case is that simply when you go to BVI or Nevis or the Bahamas, the local banking scene is simply not as developed. When you go to Hong Kong or Singapore, the banking systems and the banking situation there is much better, but access to the local banking system, if you're running an offshore company, can be quite difficult, particularly in Hong Kong, where onboarding has become significantly more challenging if you are an offshore Hong Kong entity. Whereas in Panama, there are multiple options of solid banks that you can work with, even if your corporation is fully offshore and fully operating outside of the Panamanian tax net. And that brings me to another point, tax neutrality. Panama has the right balance. Unlike jurisdictions that are openly treated as tax havens because they lack any form of taxation, Panama has a territorial tax system similar to Hong Kong or Singapore, but on steroids. Panama is just much more flexible in terms of what it defines as foreign income and what it defines as local income. So for example, you go to Hong Kong, you have to go through the offshore profits claim every single year to keep your tax neutrality. Hong Kong has very specific rules of what it considers Hong Kong source income and foreign source income, and those rules are very tightly enforce, and they can be very aggressive. Whereas in Panama, the rules are looser, they are more business friendly, and there are many activities that can actually take place from Panamanian soil and still be considered to generate foreign source income, which is just not the same as Hong Kong. It is vastly more flexible. In the case of Singapore, for example, there is a remittance element when it comes to corporations. And so if you are a Singapore company, you can take advantage of the territorial tax system in Singapore to an extent, but Singapore is more of a semi-territorial tax system where if you remit funds to Singapore and you're a Singaporean company, you may be subject to Singapore taxation. That is simply not the case in Panama. So while Hong Kong and Singapore are strong contenders here, Panama is just vastly more flexible. Now, when it comes to also presenting your company to the international business community, Panama fares very well compared to other offshore jurisdictions. While it doesn't reach the level of, reputational robustness that a U.S. LLC, for example, might reach, when compared to other offshore jurisdictions, Panama just has more going for it. Panama has the Panama Canal. It has 4 million inhabitants. Panama itself is the second most powerful and second most important global business hub and Latin American business hub, I should say, behind Miami, Florida. And so Panama just has a lot more economic substance by nature than a small island like Nevis, Bahamas, BVI, or even the Cayman Islands. And that is something that counts a lot when it comes to international business. In addition to that, I would also add that a Panamanian corporation can open the doors to residents in Panama if used correctly. And you can combine being a resident of Panama with an offshore Panamanian company. Sure, you can also move to Hong Kong or Singapore, but compare investing millions of dollars to get into those jurisdictions versus investing just a couple $100,000 to get into Panama. Panama gives you residence more affordably than Hong Kong or Singapore. And when it comes to BVI, Bahamas, or Cayman, only a handful of our clients are actually comfortable with living on very small islands with small populations that ultimately are, 60,000 people, 6 million companies, and 6 miles of beaches. And don't get me wrong, these islands are absolutely beautiful, and I have tremendous respect for what these islands do in terms of their financial and corporate industries, but you just can't compare the depth of a jurisdiction like Panama versus the depth of a jurisdiction like, let's say, the British Virgin Islands, for example. In addition to that, I would also add that among the traditional offshore jurisdictions, Panama's the only one that applies a civil law system. And that can be very, very powerful. Let me explain why. Most jurisdictions use the common law system, and you're used to this because it's the one that most movies tend to market and to show. And in the common law system, you have much more of a litigious culture. Look at the United States, for example, and to a lesser extent, Canada and the UK. These are places where litigation is a daily concern. These are jurisdictions where judges have a lot of autonomy in terms of what they consider, a fair and an equitable resolution to a conflict. In the US, you still have the jury system. You have punitive damages, for example. Under the civil law system, we have codes. We have a civil code, a tax code, we have a civil code of procedure, and when it comes to litigation exposure, it is much more controlled. There is no jury. Judges are much more regulated in terms of what they can and cannot do. Obviously, they still have a lot of room to interpret the law, but civil codes by nature are designed to foresee events and to give specific remedies for specific events, versus in the common law system where it is much more up to the jury or the judge to determine what is fair in that particular circumstance. Things like punitive damages, for example, are just not recognized in the civil law system, generally speaking. So Panama really stands out as the only civil law jurisdiction where you can set up a traditional solid offshore structure. So when you come to think of it, you've got robust privacy and secrecy laws. You've got the Law 32 of 1927 that allows extreme flexibility when it comes to corporate governance. You've got access to a very solid banking system, not at the same level as the US by any means, but by offshore standards, one of the best in the world. Dollarized economy, multi-currency access, etc. You also have a jurisdiction that offers strong economic substance by nature. Panama Canal, financial capital, second most powerful in Latin America, 4 million people, a talented workforce. And on top of that, you have a civil law system that actually protects your assets robustly, that is much less litigious than any common law system, which is what all these other jurisdictions, Hong Kong, Singapore, British Virgin Islands, Bahamas, and Cayman Islands, apply. So while Panama may not be the solution in every single case for every single client, we do believe that Panama deserves more room in the spotlight as an excellent alternative and as the #1 alternative in the vast majority of cases for clients looking for a traditional international business company. And here at the Rothbard Group, we are experts in setting up Panamanian structures for global entrepreneurs and investors. So if you want to explore Panama further, and if you want to understand how a Panamanian structure can be included in your international cross-border puzzle to increase your asset protection, your privacy, and your international business freedom, then look no further. Rothbardgroup.com. We look forward to working with you and to setting up your Panamanian structure. See you next time.